Bodmin Moor, the heart of rural Cornwall. Based out in this remarkable remote landscape is an unusual horse trainer who helps horses of all shapes and sizes.
My name's Dan Wilson. I'm what people like to refer to as a horse whisperer. I grew up in Bolventer on Bodmin Moor. Here in Cornwall we got the most wonderful riding. Bodmin Moor is just the most amazing place. I can categorically say that as far as I'm concerned there is no better place to ride in the world than this moor. I got into doing the job that I do through history really. My grandparents and my parents are both horse trainers. I grew up in the most wonderful environment in the world for this kind of thing. I've been doing this kind of job since definitely before I could walk. Everybody's got to be good at something.
A protege of world-renowned horse whisperer Monty Roberts, Dan has been working with and riding horses all of his life.
I found the horses worked for me very, very well. I found that I had a good compassion for the horses and I could get the best out of them. This job has the most amazing job satisfaction that you can think of. I've worked in a lot of different trades, but I've always come back to the horses. When you take a horse that's going to be shot because it's put people in hospital and it's been a really, really bad problem and someone's going to shoot it before it kills somebody, and you take that horse and you turn it around, you help the problems it's got in its head or the physical issues, whatever they might be, and you produce a nice, calm, quiet, happy horse. Job satisfaction in that is huge.
The job of a horse trainer comes with its fair share of risks and pitfalls.
Doing the job traditionally the way I used to work, it could be very, very dangerous. The thing that you can predict about horses is that horses are unpredictable. They are innately dangerous. Things happen, things go wrong. Have I ever been injured before? Hell yeah, just a few times. When I used to work traditionally when I was younger, I became quite a regular visitor to A&E. When I was a teenager, early 20s, and I'd walk into A&E, one of the nurses would undoubtedly walk across the room and ask Mr. Wilson, what the bloody hell have you done now? The worst injury is when I was about 14, I was riding a bucking horse and he ripped me out the saddle with my left leg, and that's given me an awful lot of trouble over the years. It's fair uncomfortable study talking to you right now. I had a horse hit me in the chest with his head and he split down the side of these ribs and he broke the front and he broke the back and the whole piece was floating around. The ribs are always the worst because in a small outfit like mine you can't afford to stop working, and with ribs, every time you lay on a saddle to get on one they pop. I think I re-broke these ribs every day for weeks and weeks until they finally knitted up. But it's not exactly a smooth joint anymore. I was known by first name basis by all the nurses.
A true cowboy at heart, Dan has been influenced by Western riding culture from a very early age.
I grew up watching John Wayne films, loved that kind of thing when I was a kid. I was lucky that I've always ridden in a Western saddle, and my father always rode in a Western saddle, so I've always played around at being a cowboy. The first time I broke in a horse for money, I was 14. I felt like a champion. Absolutely fantastic. When I was a kid, I used to do it very different to how I do it now. I was very rough and ready. I used to get on there and ride whatever the horse threw at me. I now know that back then I used to steal the rides, because I used to get riding the horse before the horse was ready. Compared to what I do now, I was less compassionate. I understood the horses a lot less than I thought I did. The cowboy side of horses was always my draw. I was lucky enough to have great parents that were, worked around horses, and I kind of took a little bit from my mum, a little bit from my dad, and found my own path down the middle. And then later on in my life, I came across Monty Roberts. Heard about all this horse whispering stuff and thought it sounded like a load of old rubbish. But I'll go and take a look, and I could see that the horses that came into the pen were what he said they were, and I could see for myself the difference between when they walked in the pen to when they went out. So I could see what he'd achieved in a small space of time. His compassion with the horses, it matched the way I was thinking. Working in that profession myself at the time, I understood it was a good thing and that he'd achieved something that most other people wouldn't be achieving. So I figured there's got to be something in this, I'll give it a go. So I came home from that demo, I did my first ever join up in the yard and it worked. And I figured that if I could come away with this much knowledge of what this guy does and make it work, then obviously there's something in it and I wanted to learn more. So off I went and learnt more, and this made it so blatantly obvious that that was the way for me to go.
Dan works as Monty's demo rider, working with horses of all temperaments all over the world.
I've been incredibly lucky with the work that I've done with Monty Roberts, travelled the world and seen some amazing places.
Dan has been touring and riding with Monty for over 20 years.
Dan is a unique character in that he's light, he's flexible, he's athletic, he knows horses, he can ride a tough one, and he can be very gentle with one that doesn't need a tough rider. That's an unusual person. I've had 15, 20 riders, and Dan is one of those still riding for me. I don't know how many times I've gotten him bucked off. I don't even think once. Yeah, that horse reared over backwards and slammed him against the fence and jumped up and down on him. That was a terrible thing, but it didn't buck him off.
The non-violent method Dan uses to communicate with horses is known as join-up.
I guess the biggest influence that I have in my day-to-day work for Monty is the join-up itself.
To carry out join-up, a very special way of communicating with the horses is used. This is predominantly body language, using the language of equus.
Equus is a word in Latin. The full name is Equus caballus, the Latin name of the horse, an equine. And Equus caballus would include donkeys, mules, and zebras. They're equine animals. And equus, the language, is where I've laid the word into. I just borrowed that Latin term, the first name of the horse, as their language, the language of equus. And it's a language of signs, not of sounds. So it's a lot like signing for the deaf.
The method replicates the behaviour of the lead mare, who is the most dominant of the herd.
What I can now achieve in an average of 7 minutes in the kind of level of trust and companionship built up with the horse, that used to take me about 3 weeks. The way that I work now is in a confined space in that 50-foot round pen, and that makes the decisions that the horse has got, they can either go left or they can go right, and there's nowhere to go. And I used to do it in places like this, and if that horse took off in a straight line and there was no stopping him, you're going to hit the deck, something's going to happen. Maybe you're going to hurt the horse, maybe you're going to hurt yourself. The horse that we work today, back in the round pen at home, is a horse called Buddy. He is the son of this horse here. The process that we used was what people commonly refer to as horse whispering. We mimicked being the lead horse of a herd, pushed him out on his own to kick off his own inbuilt survival instincts, whereas he wanted to be back in the middle with me and not out on his own. So I allowed him in. This set up the whole situation to start with, that he was willing to listen and behave himself. Very, very basically, the way that I work now is that I make every option difficult for the horse except for the one I want the horse to take. And if I'm good enough with my timing and with portraying that to the horse, pretty soon the horse will realise that's the easy option, so therefore the horse will decide to take that option. So if that option is to accept having a saddle on, or accept the rider, or accept to go onto the trailer, or whatever the issue is, that's how it works. So it's always the horse's decision. The first day of a horse's ridden life is so important that the whole thing goes smoothly and there's nothing negative. If he has a negative experience the first time he's ridden, he's going to carry that for at least a lot of years, if not his whole life. We all know ourselves as humans that the first few days at school, they can be absolute hell, and if you had a bad experience and you talk about it now, it'll give you the shivers, and you don't like it, and a negative association. Everything needs to be positive. So it's really, really important. And this is the way that I found that builds the confidence much, much quicker.
A horse's basic natural survival instincts can sometimes be overlooked in the training process.
Horses, really, at the end of the day, they're only concerned with two things, and that is survival and reproduction. Now, reproduction obviously is survival of the species. So in my mind, all horses are really, really concerned with, when you boil it down to it, is survival.
Horses can be just like people. They have unique personalities and characteristics that sometimes take time to adjust to.
One of the reasons that I get the results that I get is that I treat horses as individuals. Horses' temperaments come into it a lot. Very often you get a horse that absolutely hates your guts, and quite often you're starting off with a horse that you don't get on with too much yourself either. But working the way that I work, that's part of understanding it. It would be very, very similar to working with kids in kind of boot camp and things like that, you know. You can be thrown some really, really difficult horses. You want to take your face off and they want to take on the world, and you just don't fight with them. You just keep stepping out of their way and putting them to work and making them fight themselves. And the second that they realise that they're fighting themselves and not you, they stop and start to think. And when they start to think, they start to understand how the world works and what's going on. And I've so far, touch wood, I've never ever been let down. I've always managed to turn them around.
The outdated and often violent negative side of traditional training is still sometimes practiced today.
The difference between the bad side of traditional, there's a lot of good traditional horsemanship, and you know, I always say without the BHS we'd have no better off, horsemanship be no better off than some real bad places in the world, you know. But there's bad things go on out there that people don't see and don't understand, and it amazes me when people complain about somebody jerked on a line a bit too hard or used a particular piece of equipment and it's barbaric. When I know what's really going on in the world, you know, people make such a big fuss. And in the reality of the real world, there's people out there right now in this country, among others, but in this country where we are right now, that will be tying horses to a wall. They'll be beating 7 bells or what's it out of him with a bit of Alcaphene pipe or, you know, something like that. The force that's involved is immense. People twitch ears a lot in this country. People tie up legs a lot in this country. It's never spoken about, and people don't believe it happens in this country, and I can assure you it does. A lot of the horses that I get in to try and get right, the reason that they're wrong is that they've met these kind of trainers.
If non-violent methods are used by owners to achieve good results with the horse, then Dan is satisfied. The welfare of the horse should always come first.
Working with the horses, that's always the easy part. Very often getting the horse owners and the clients to understand what you're doing, when and why can be really difficult sometimes. You're asking them to change the way of working with this horse, and it might be something that they've done the same way for the last 20 or 30 years. And they can find it really difficult to believe that that's the way to go. And you can show them physically, do it like this happens, do it like this and this happens. And they'll still have a yeah, but to say. The work works. It's as simple as that, it works. They can throw any, yeah, but what about this and what about this? You put the effort in and the time in, you can always prove your point the way that I do it now. Whereas traditionally, very often it would be that I could ride the horse, but maybe somebody else couldn't. To be honest, that's the biggest change from how I used to work to how I work now, is that now I can say to a 16-year-old girl, if you do this, this and this, and you never do that, that and that, you'll never have the problem again. Whereas before, sometimes that wasn't the case. I stand behind everything that I do, so I'm quite happy for owners to come anytime, and I actually encourage that, as a lot of people don't want the owners to come and see the work that they're doing with the horses. What we're doing, there's nothing to hide, so it's very easy to do that. You need to get the owner to understand what, when and why with the horses, you know, what I've done and when I've done it and why I've done it. Otherwise it's completely pointless sending me the horse. It's just not going to work. You do occasionally come across an owner maybe that's got more money than sense. You can show them till you're blue in the face. Do this and this will happen, and do that and this will happen. years ago. I had a client who I knew was going to get hurt on this horse, and I'd subtly tried to tell her 2 or 3 times it just wasn't the horse for you, it was never going to work out. So long as I was riding the horse in the interim, she'd get away with riding it 2 or 3 times. But I knew if she was just left to her own devices with this horse, something was going to happen and one of them was going to end up getting hurt. And it was a really difficult situation, and I talked to Monty about it, and he grabbed me by the shoulder, looked me deep in the eye, and he told me that I must man up and talk to this owner, because the same thing had happened to him years ago. He'd tried to tell an owner not to get on a horse. She didn't listen to him because she thought she knew better. She thought the horse loved her and everything would be fine, and it wasn't. The person concerned is no longer with us. I know that he beat himself up because he did everything that he could, but you know, that's a horrible situation to be in, you know, horrible position to be in.
Dan's practical horsemanship encourages the owners to be involved with all stages of the training process.
So I'd say to anybody that's considering sending a horse away to be trained or retrained, and the yard where they're going doesn't want them to come and visit the horse and watch any of the training, I'd say put the horse back in the lorry and shut the ramp and drive away, because if they don't want you to come and watch what's going on, then they've got something to hide. Anybody that does anything the way that we do it will be more than happy to have the owner there.
Sometimes, even the simplest of habits can be tricky to overcome.
One of my bugbears with owners that I find difficult to get the owners to stop, which is a lot of horse owners will constantly click to the horse. And they'll do it for everything. They'll do it to speed the horse up, they'll do it to calm the horse down. They'll do it because they're in the vicinity of a horse. You're having a conversation and a horse comes over to say hello and they'll instantly click to it and put the hand out to it. It winds me up when, say, somebody's trying to get a horse to load into a trailer that's scared of loading in the trailer. They'll lead the horse up, the horse will stop, and they'll turn around and face the horse and they'll click to it. Come on then. But do you know what the clicking, what that noise means to a horse? What it equates to at the end of the day is the sound of a twig breaking. That is a twig breaking, and a twig breaking is a predator coming out of those trees. You know, so to a horse, there's no particular conscious thought about that noise. It's a survival instinct straight away. So you've got a horse, you're trying to get asked to go into a trailer or something calm and quiet, calm the horse down, clicking to it is not going to calm the horse down in any way whatsoever. If someone sends me a horse, I fix the horse and then send it home. The owner has no idea what I've done, so when the horse goes wrong or something doesn't work right, they don't know what to do. So then it comes back on me, so it's no good for me. It's much, much more beneficial for me to have the owner come and be involved in the training as much as possible. This kind of job needs to be open, and it should be no other way.
The learning process is continuously evolving for Dan.
The day that I stop learning, or believe that I've stopped learning, would be the day for me to hang up my boots. Doing this job, you have to be open-minded. You have to be looking forward. I learn something new from every horse I work with. I learn something new every time I work and watch Monty. You're changing what you're doing, you know, constantly. There's always something new coming out.
There's no competition for Dan right now. He probably has ridden more horses during the time that I've known him than any other rider on earth in front of public audiences. We all make mistakes, but I haven't seen him make very many. People like Dan are rare. They're at the apex. They're right at the peak of this industry. I couldn't support him more strongly.
As Dan has learned from Monty and continues to evolve, he is passing on his knowledge to the next generation of horse trainers and doing his part to change the industry for the better.
The whole industry itself is beginning to shift very, very slowly and moving finally in the right direction, and people are starting to understand the way that this all works, and to be honest, the results speak for themselves. When you have a horse that's been to 4 or 5 different trainers and they've all written it off, and you turn it around in a few days, there is no arguing with it. It works.